One click. That's all it took. One click and 18 months of work. 247 files, 12,000 lines of code, countless late nights and weekends, vanished into digital oblivion. I watched the progress bar fill with a kind of detached fascination. 10%, 25%, 50%. Like watching a building collapse in slow motion, knowing you're the one who planted the explosives. The timestamp read 4:47 p.m. on a Friday, my last day at Nexus Technologies. In 13 minutes, I would hand in my badge, shake hands with people who thought they knew me, and walk out of that building forever. Behind me, the deletion completed with a soft chime, a cheerful sound, almost mocking. Project Aurora, successfully deleted. My name is Ryan Torres, and 3 months ago, I destroyed a $1 million project and let everyone believe it was a system error. I am not writing this confession because I feel guilty, though I do in ways I didn't expect. I'm writing it because the lie has started to consume me from the inside, and I need someone to know the truth before it finishes the job. Have you ever done something in a moment of rage that you couldn't take back? Something that felt completely justified in the instant you did it, but haunted you every moment after? I'm asking because I need to know if I'm alone in this particular hell. If you've ever crossed that line, the one between thinking about revenge and actually taking it, tell me in the comments. Tell me what it cost you, because I'm still counting the price. Let me be clear about something. I'm not the villain of this story. At least, I didn't start out that way. I was the hero once, the guy who built Project Aurora from nothing, who sacrificed everything to make it succeed, who believed that hard work and talent would be rewarded. I was naive. The tech industry has a way of grinding down naive people. It chews them up, extracts their innovation and passion, and spits out the husk. I've seen it happen to dozens of brilliant engineers. I just never thought it would happen to me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why I did what I did, you need to understand what Project Aurora was, and, more importantly, you need to understand what it cost me to build it. Aurora was supposed to revolutionize supply chain management. I know that sounds boring. Supply chain management doesn't exactly set hearts racing. But trust me, in the world of enterprise software, it was revolutionary. A predictive AI system that could anticipate disruptions, optimize logistics in real time, and save companies millions in inefficiencies. I conceived it during a weekend hackathon 3 years ago, pitched it to leadership on a Monday, had approval by Wednesday, spent the next 18 months of my life turning it from a concept into reality. 18 months of 14-hour days, 18 months of missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and relationships that withered from neglect. 18 months of pouring every ounce of creativity and expertise I had into something I believed would change everything. I wasn't just the lead developer. I was Aurora's father, its architect, its guardian. Every elegant solution, every breakthrough algorithm, every late-night epiphany that pushed the project forward, that was me. And when it was finally ready, when the demo dazzled the executives and the contracts started rolling in, do you know what happened? They promoted someone else. Not just anyone. They promoted Marcus Webb, my project manager, a man whose primary contribution to Aurora was scheduling meetings and taking credit for other people's work. They made him VP of Product Innovation, gave him a corner office and a 6-figure bonus, and positioned him as the visionary genius behind the project that I had bled for. My reward? A form letter thanking me for my valuable contributions and a 3% cost of living raise. That was 6 months ago. That was when something inside me began to crack. I didn't snap immediately. That's not how these things work. Betrayal is a slow poison. It seeps into your bloodstream gradually, contaminating everything it touches. You tell yourself to be professional. You tell yourself that recognition doesn't matter, that the work itself is the reward. You tell yourself all the lies that keep people functioning in systems designed to exploit them. For a while, I believed those lies. I kept showing up, kept maintaining Aurora's codebase, fixing bugs, implementing the features that Marcus presented in board meetings as if he'd thought of them himself. I watched him charm executives with his polished presentations, using words I'd written, explaining concepts I'd developed, taking ownership of innovations that had come from my mind alone. He never acknowledged me, not once. In meeting after meeting, it was always my vision for Aurora and the direction I'm taking the product. I became invisible, the ghost in the machine, essential but unmentioned. My teammates noticed. A few of them tried to speak up, to correct the record, but corporate politics is a powerful silencer. Nobody wanted to be seen as difficult. Nobody wanted to risk their own position by challenging the new VP. So they stayed quiet, and I stayed quiet, and the poison spread. I started drinking more, not dramatically. I wasn't stumbling into work or missing deadlines, just a glass of whiskey when I got home. Then 2, then 3, enough to dull the edges of the resentment that was becoming my constant companion. My girlfriend, Sarah, noticed the change before I did. "You're different," she said one night, 3 months after Marcus's promotion. "You used to love your job. Now you come home and just simmer. I can feel the anger radiating off you." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Ryan, talk to me. What's going on?" I wanted to explain. I wanted to pour out every grievance, every stolen credit, every moment of invisibility that was slowly erasing my sense of self. But how do you explain to someone that your entire professional identity has been hijacked? How do you make them understand that the work you're most proud of now belongs to someone else, and there's nothing you can do about it? "Just work stuff," I said. "It'll pass." It didn't pass. 3 weeks later, Sarah left. Not dramatically, no screaming match, no thrown possessions. She just packed a bag one weekend while I was debugging a critical Aurora update and said she couldn't watch me destroy myself anymore. "You're not the person I fell in love with," she told me at the door. "That person had passion and joy and hope. You're just angry now, all the time, and I can't fix that. Only you can." She was right. I didn't fix it. I let the anger grow. The final straw came at the quarterly all-hands meeting when Marcus unveiled the Aurora 2.0 roadmap, features I had sketched on napkins during late-night coding sessions, architectures I had debated with myself for months before arriving at the optimal solution, ideas I had shared with him in confidence, thinking we were collaborators rather than rivals. He presented them all as his own vision, his leadership, his genius. And when a junior engineer asked about the technical implementation, Marcus smiled that politicians smile and said, "I have a brilliant team executing the details, but the vision, that comes from truly understanding where the market is heading." The details? 18 months of my life reduced to details. That night, I drafted my resignation letter. 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately. Professional, courteous, utterly devoid of the fury burning in my chest. But as I stared at the letter, a different thought began to form. Why should I leave quietly? Why should I let Marcus keep profiting from my work after I was gone? Why should Aurora continue to exist, generating millions in revenue and accolades, while I faded into obscurity? The thought was dark, dangerous, the kind of thought that reasonable people dismiss and forget. I didn't dismiss it. I fed it. I spent my 2-week notice period planning my revenge. On the surface, I was the model departing employee. I documented my code meticulously, held knowledge transfer sessions with the developers who would take over my responsibilities, answered questions patiently, attended farewell lunches, accepted the cards signed by coworkers who barely knew my name. Underneath, I was mapping every vulnerability in the system I'd built. Aurora's architecture was elegant, but it had weaknesses. Weaknesses I'd designed into it, not maliciously, but because perfect security is impossible and trade-offs are necessary. The backup systems were robust, but not instantaneous. The access controls were strict, but not absolute. The disaster recovery protocols were comprehensive, but had never been tested at full scale. I knew every back door, every exception handler, every moment of vulnerability in the system's operation. I had designed them all. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same intimate knowledge that made me invaluable was now the weapon I would use to destroy everything I created. I settled on a Friday afternoon for the execution. End of business, when IT support would be minimal. My last day, when my access credentials were still active, but my departure was imminent. The perfect window. The plan was simple. Delete the core repository and corrupt the recent backups. Not the ancient archives. Those were stored off-site and would take days to retrieve and restore. But the working code base, the one that held 18 months of continuous development, that would be gone. And in the chaos of discovering the loss, the immediate assumption would be system failure, not sabotage. I practiced the sequence in my head, over and over. Access the admin panel. Navigate to the core directory. Initiate deletion. Confirm. Then, before anyone could respond, run the corruption script I'd written on the backup servers. Total time, under 3 minutes. Total damage, approximately $1.2 million in lost development time, plus the contracts that would collapse when delivery dates couldn't be met, plus the reputational damage to the company and, most importantly, to Marcus Webb. I told myself I wasn't hurting innocent people. The junior developers would find other jobs. The company would survive. Insurance would cover some of the losses. I told myself I was delivering justice. I told myself a lot of things. The night before my last day, I lay awake in my apartment, the apartment that felt too empty since Sarah left, and stared at the ceiling. My heart was racing. My hands were sweating. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was wrong, that I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. But underneath that fear was something else, something that had been building for months, demanding release. Rage. Pure, clarifying rage. They had taken everything from me, my work, my recognition, my relationship, my sense of self. And they had done it casually, without malice, without even noticing the damage they'd caused. I was collateral, an inconvenience to be managed, a resource to be exploited and discarded. Well, I thought, let them notice this. Let them notice me now. Friday, March 15th, my last day at Nexus Technologies. I arrived early, 7:30 a.m., before most of the office. I wanted to walk the halls one more time, to sit at my desk and remember what it felt like when I still believed this place had a future for me. The office was quiet. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the empty cubicles. I made myself a cup of coffee, my last cup from the machine I'd used 1,000 times, and sat in my chair, looking at the screen where I'd spent so many hours of my life. My desktop wallpaper was still the Aurora logo, the one I'd designed during a burst of inspiration at 2 a.m. A stylized sunrise, rays of light breaking through clouds. It had seemed hopeful once. Now it just looked naive. People began filtering in around 9. The usual parade of good mornings and how are yous, slightly more effusive than normal, because everyone knew it was my last day. A few people stopped by my desk to say goodbye. Handshakes, well wishes, promises to stay in touch that neither party believed. Marcus Webb made an appearance around 10:30. He swept through the engineering floor with his usual performative energy, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, playing the part of the beloved leader. When he reached my desk, he paused and arranged his face into an expression of benevolent regret. "Ryan, today's the day, huh? Today's the day. Listen, I want you to know how much I valued your contributions to the team. Aurora wouldn't be what it is without the work you've done." For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he would finally acknowledge it, finally give credit where it was due. Your technical skills have been invaluable in executing the vision we've developed together. Nexus is losing a talented implementer. Implementer. The word hit me like a slap. Not architect, not creator, not visionary. Implementer. The person who executes someone else's ideas. Thanks, Marcus. I kept my voice even, professional. It's been an experience. He gave me that politician smile, squeezed my shoulder, and moved on to his next performance. I watched him go, and I felt the last of my hesitation evaporate. The rest of the day passed in a blur. More goodbyes, a farewell lunch that I barely tasted, a card with signatures from people I'd worked alongside for 3 years, most of whom couldn't have described what I actually did if their lives depended on it. At 4:30, I began clearing out my desk. A few personal items, a photo of Sarah I hadn't been able to throw away, a stress ball shaped like a brain, a coffee mug with a programming joke. I put them in a cardboard box slowly, deliberately, watching the clock tick toward my moment. 4:45. The office was starting to empty. Friday afternoon, people eager to start their weekends. 4:46. I logged into the admin panel. My credentials still worked. They wouldn't be deactivated until midnight, standard HR procedure. 4:47. I navigated to the core repository. Project Aurora. 247 files. 18 months of my life, condensed into directories and subdirectories and lines of code. I thought about Sarah, about the person I used to be, about all the moments that had led to this one. Then I clicked delete. The confirmation dialog asked if I was sure. I was sure. The progress bar filled, the files vanished, and just like that, Project Aurora began its journey toward oblivion. I ran the backup corruption script next, a small program I'd written the week before, disguised as a routine maintenance tool. It introduced subtle errors into the recent backup files, enough to make restoration impossible without extensive forensic recovery. Then I logged out, closed my laptop, picked up my cardboard box, walked to HR to turn in my badge. The whole thing took less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes to destroy $1 million of work. 5 minutes to end my career at Nexus Technologies in a way that none of them would ever suspect. Linda Chen, the HR representative, smiled at me as she collected my badge and had me sign the exit paperwork. "Any feedback on your experience here?" she asked. "For our records." I thought about telling her everything, about the stolen credit, the invisible labor, the systematic erasure of my contributions, about the rage that had been building for months, demanding release. "No," I said. "It was fine. Good luck with everything." I shook her hand and walked out the front door into the late afternoon sunlight. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected the rage to dissipate, replaced by satisfaction at having finally struck back against the system that had wronged me. Instead, I felt nothing, just a hollow emptiness where the anger used to be. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the building where I'd spent 3 years of my life, watching people trickle out, checking their phones, eager to start their weekends, unaware that chaos was about to unfold. Then I drove home. The call came Sunday morning. Not to me directly. I wasn't supposed to know anything had happened, but I stayed connected with a few colleagues on social media, and the panic was palpable even through the carefully worded messages. "Did you hear about Aurora? The whole thing's gone. IT says it was a server failure, corrupted the backups too. Marcus is losing his mind. They're saying it could take months to rebuild." I watched the chaos unfold from the safety of my apartment, refreshing my feeds compulsively, hungry for details about the destruction I'd caused. The initial assessment was exactly what I'd hoped: catastrophic system failure, a rare confluence of hardware malfunction and backup corruption. Nobody suspected sabotage. Why would they? The departing engineer had been professional, courteous, helpful to the end. No warning signs, no motive that anyone knew about. Monday brought more details. The company was bringing in forensic specialists. Insurance adjusters were involved. The delivery timeline for several major contracts was now impossible to meet. And Marcus Webb, my nemesis, my replacement, the thief who'd stolen my legacy, was being questioned intensively about how this could have happened on his watch. I should have felt satisfaction. I felt sick. At this point, I need to stop and ask you something. Put yourself in my position. You've done something irreversible, something that felt justified in the moment, but now fills you with dread. Would you confess and accept the consequences, or would you stay silent and hope the lie holds? Type confess or silence in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you would do. Because I chose silence, and I'm still not sure if that was strength or cowardice. The forensic team arrived on Tuesday. I know this because David Chen, one of the junior developers I had mentored, one of the few people at Nexus who'd actually respected me, sent me a text asking if I'd be willing to answer some questions about the system architecture. My heart stopped when I read it. They were investigating. Of course they were investigating. $1 million doesn't just vanish without someone asking hard questions. I typed back a casual reply. Sure, happy to help. What do they need to know? David called me instead of texting. His voice was strained. It's bad, Ryan. Really bad. They're saying the data loss was too comprehensive to be accidental. They're looking at everyone who had admin access in the last month. That's a lot of people, I said carefully. Not really. Maybe 6 or 7 with the level of access needed. And you're one of them. I forced myself to breathe normally. I mean, I was there for 3 years. Of course I had admin access. I know, I told him that. I said you were one of the most professional people I've ever worked with, that there is no way you'd do something like this. But they want to talk to everyone. Standard procedure. Sure, I get it. When? Tomorrow, if you're available. They're setting up interviews at the office. I agreed. What else could I do? That night, I barely slept. I replayed the deletion over and over in my mind, searching for mistakes, for traces I might have left behind. I'd been careful, so careful. But forensic specialists were trained to find the unfindable. What if I'd missed something? What if there was a log file I'd overlooked, a timestamp that didn't add up, a digital fingerprint that led directly back to me? The interview was at 2 p.m. I arrived at 1:45, dressed in business casual, projecting the calm professionalism of an innocent man with nothing to hide. The forensic specialist was a woman named Dr. Patricia Vance, mid-50s, sharp eyes, the kind of person who clearly didn't suffer fools. She shook my hand with a grip that suggested she'd broken tougher cases than this. Mr. Torres, thank you for coming in. I understand you were the lead developer on Project Aurora. That's right, for about 18 months. And you left the company last Friday? Yes, it was my last day. She made a note on her tablet. Walk me through your final day, everything you remember. I'd prepared for this. I told her about arriving early, clearing out my desk, attending the farewell lunch. I mentioned handing in my badge to Linda Chen at 4:55 p.m., a detail I knew would be verified. And between 4:30 and 4:55, I was packing up my things, saying final goodbyes to a few colleagues. Did you access the Aurora system during that time? Here was the moment, the fork in the road. I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples, but I kept my face neutral. I don't think so. Maybe briefly, to check if there were any pending items I'd forgotten, but nothing significant. Dr. Vance studied me for a long moment. The access logs show someone with admin credentials accessing the core repository at 4:47 p.m. on Friday. The deletion command was initiated at that time. That's concerning, I said, hoping my voice didn't betray the terror flooding through me. But there were several people with admin access. It wasn't just me. You're correct. We're interviewing everyone. She set down her tablet. Mr. Torres, I'm going to be direct with you. In my experience, this kind of targeted destruction is almost always internal. someone who knew the system intimately, someone who had a reason to want it gone. I spent 18 months building Aurora. Why would I want to destroy it? That's what I'm trying to understand. Her eyes never left mine. You were the lead developer, but you weren't promoted when the project succeeded. Marcus Webb received that recognition instead. That must have been frustrating. I felt a cold sweat forming on my back. She knew. She already knew the motive. She was just waiting to see if I'd confirm it. It wasn't ideal, I admitted. But I'm a professional. I don't sabotage projects because of office politics. Of course not. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That would be career suicide, not to mention potentially criminal. The interview lasted another 45 minutes. She asked about the backup architecture, the access protocols, the security vulnerabilities, questions I'd hoped would never be asked. I answered carefully, truthfully where I could, evasively where I had to. When it was over, she shook my hand again. Thank you for your time, Mr. Torres. We may have follow-up questions. Of course. Happy to help. I walked out of that building on shaky legs, got in my car, and drove directly to a bar 3 miles away. I sat there for 4 hours, drinking whiskey and waiting for the police to show up. They didn't. Not that day. The investigation continued for 3 weeks. I tracked its progress obsessively, pumping David and other contacts for information while pretending to be casually curious. The forensic team had narrowed their focus to 4 individuals with the access and technical knowledge to execute the deletion. I was one of them, but I wasn't the only one. What I hadn't anticipated, what I couldn't have anticipated, was that I wasn't the only person at Nexus with a grudge. Her name was Priya Sharma, Senior Database Administrator. She'd been passed over for promotion twice, had filed an HR complaint about hostile work environment that went nowhere, and had resigned the same week I did. She also had admin access to Aurora's backup systems. The forensic team found discrepancies in her access logs that they couldn't explain, timestamps that didn't quite align, unexplained activity in the backup directories on the afternoon of the deletion. They weren't caused by her. I knew that because I'd caused them. The corruption script I'd run had left traces that, viewed from a certain angle, looked like unauthorized access from her credentials. I'd accidentally framed someone else. When David told me Priya had been brought in for a second interview, a much longer, more intensive interview, I felt something I hadn't expected. Guilt. Not for destroying Aurora. That crime had felt almost abstract, a strike against a faceless corporation that had wronged me. But Priya was real. Priya was a person with a career and a reputation and a life that was about to be destroyed because of something I'd done. I wanted to feel relieved that the suspicion was shifting away from me. Instead, I felt sick. The worst part? Priya had actually been one of the few people who defended me when Marcus took credit for my work. She'd spoken up in meetings, tried to redirect praise to where it belonged. She'd been an ally, and I'd never even properly thanked her. Now she's about to take the fall from my crime. I started having nightmares. Priya's face twisted with confusion and fear, asking me why I hadn't spoken up. Marcus Webb laughing in the background, still untouched, still successful, while innocent people burned for my vengeance. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping properly. The hollow emptiness I'd felt after the deletion was replaced by something worse, a gnawing, constant awareness of the harm I'd caused. The company made a decision 3 weeks after the incident. They couldn't prove conclusively who had deleted the files, but Priya's logs were the most suspicious. Her history of complaints against the company provided motive. Her technical expertise provided means. They fired her without severance, citing gross misconduct. They also reported her to law enforcement. I found out from David, who sounded genuinely shaken when he called. They're saying she could face criminal charges, felony destruction of property. Her whole career is over, Ryan, and I don't even know if she did it. The evidence is circumstantial at best. I made sympathetic noises, said all the right things about how terrible the situation was, how the company should be more careful before ruining someone's life. Inside, I was screaming. That night, I drove to Priya's apartment complex. I didn't knock on her door. I'm not sure what I would have said if I had. I just sat in my car, looking up at her windows, watching the lights go on and off. She was in there, dealing with the destruction of her professional life, wondering if she'd go to prison for something she didn't do, trying to figure out how to prove a negative, how to demonstrate that she hadn't committed a crime that someone else had committed using her credentials. I could end it with one phone call, one confession, one moment of honesty. I sat in that car for 2 hours. Then I drove home. The weeks that followed were a slow descent into something I didn't recognize. I'd gotten away with it. That was the surreal reality I woke up to every morning. The investigation had concluded, the blame had landed on someone else, and I was free to move on with my life. Except, I couldn't move on. I found a new job, a smaller company, less prestigious, but stable work that paid the bills. I went through the motions of starting over. New desk, new colleagues, new projects that meant nothing to me. But at night, when the distractions faded, the guilt came roaring back. I started researching Priya obsessively. LinkedIn showed her profile had gone quiet. Her Twitter, once full of industry insights and professional commentary, had been deleted. Mutual contacts mentioned in hushed tones that she'd hired a lawyer and was fighting the criminal charges, but the process was draining her savings. She was innocent. I was free. The universe had distributed justice exactly backward. I developed insomnia. Couldn't fall asleep without seeing the deletion progress bar in my mind. Couldn't stay asleep without nightmares about Priya's face. I tried drinking more, but alcohol had stopped providing the numbing effect I craved. I tried exercise, meditation, therapy, paying a stranger to listen to my work stress without ever revealing what I'd actually done. Nothing helped. 3 months after the incident, I hit bottom. It happened on a Tuesday evening. I was sitting in my new apartment, smaller than the old one, cheaper, all I could justify now that my career trajectory had cratered. And I was thinking about Priya, about Marcus, about the person I used to be, the one who built things instead of destroying them. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt anything positive. Joy, hope, satisfaction, pride. Those emotions felt like memories of someone else's life. All I had now was guilt and emptiness, alternating like a heartbeat. My phone was in my hand. I'd pulled up the number for the Nexus Technologies legal department, thinking I would finally confess, finally end this nightmare for both of us. But I couldn't do it. I wasn't afraid of prison. That would almost have been a relief, a concrete punishment, a defined sentence, an end to the uncertainty. What paralyzed me was the thought of everyone knowing. My parents, my friends, my new colleagues. The look on David's face when he realized the person he defended was actually the saboteur. The shame was worse than the guilt. So I put down the phone, and I did something else instead. I started sending money to Priya, anonymously, through a series of intermediaries I'd set up using cryptocurrency and shell accounts, skills I'd developed building Aurora security systems, now turned to a different purpose. Not enough to seem suspicious, but enough to help. A few thousand here, a few thousand there, enough to cover some of her legal fees, enough to keep her from losing her apartment. It wasn't confession, it wasn't justice, it wasn't even really restitution, but it was something. A tiny counterweight against the massive wrong I'd committed. A way to feel like I was doing something other than just existing in the aftermath of my worst decision. I told myself it was enough. It wasn't. 6 months after the deletion, I received an email that changed everything. It was from an address I didn't recognize, with a subject line that made my blood run cold. I know what you did to Aurora. I stared at those words for 5 minutes before I could bring myself to open the message. Ryan, I've spent 6 months analyzing the forensic data from the Aurora incident. I know it wasn't Priya. The corruption pattern in the backup systems matches a script that only someone with deep knowledge of Aurora's architecture could have written. Someone like the lead developer. Someone like you. I haven't told anyone, not yet. I want to hear your side of the story first. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th and Main, Saturday at 10 a.m. Come alone. If you don't show up, I go to the police. Asterisk. A friend. I read it 3 times, trying to determine if it was a bluff. It could have been. The evidence against me was circumstantial, wasn't it? I'd been careful. I'd covered my tracks. But something in the email's tone suggested genuine knowledge. Whoever this was, they understood the technical details. They'd seen something in the forensic data that others had missed. I had 2 choices, run or face whoever was waiting for me. Running would confirm guilt. And where would I go? I had no money saved, no plan, no identity to disappear into. So on Saturday morning, I drove to the coffee shop on 5th and Main. The person waiting for me wasn't who I expected. She was sitting in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a cup of tea, watching me approach. Mid-30s, dark hair, tired eyes. It took me a moment to place her face. Priya Sharma. Sit down, Ryan. I sat. My mouth was completely dry. How did you? I had a lot of time on my hands, she said quietly, while I was fighting criminal charges for something I didn't do. Plenty of time to dig through every scrap of data, every access log, every line of forensic analysis. Plenty of time to figure out who really destroyed Aurora. Priya, Don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't give me some sob story about how Marcus stole your work and you snapped. I know all of that already. What I want to know is why didn't you stop it? When you saw what was happening to me, why didn't you come forward? I had no answer. Do you know what the last 6 months have been like for me? She wasn't crying. She was past crying, but her voice shook. I lost my job, lost my reputation, spent every penny I had on lawyers, fighting charges that you knew were false. My parents think I'm a criminal. My colleagues won't return my calls. I've been effectively blacklisted from an industry I've worked in for 15 years. The money, I said weakly, the anonymous payments, that was me. I was trying to help. You were trying to ease your conscience. There's a difference. She took a breath. I didn't come here to yell at you, Ryan. I came here to make you an offer. What kind of offer? The criminal case against me is falling apart. My lawyer found inconsistencies in the forensic report, enough to create reasonable doubt. The charges will probably be dropped within the month. I'll still have a ruined career, but I won't be going to prison. I felt a wave of relief that I had no right to feel. But here's the thing, Priya continued. Even when I'm cleared, people will wonder. The doubt will follow me forever. Unless someone else confesses. Unless the real saboteur comes forward and takes responsibility. I understood what she was asking. If I confess, they'll prosecute me. Probably. I could go to prison. You should have thought of that before you decided to frame an innocent person. The words hit like punches. Because she was right. Everything she was saying was right. Why are you giving me a choice? I asked. Why not just go to the police yourself? Tell them what you found. Priya was quiet for a long moment. Because I spent months being accused of something I didn't do, she finally said. I know what it's like to be judged without a chance to explain. I won't do that to someone else, even someone who deserves it. If you confess, it should be your choice, your terms, not because I forced your hand. She stood up, leaving her half-finished tea on the table. Think about it, but don't take too long. Every day you stay silent is another day I carry the stigma of a crime I didn't commit. She walked out without looking back. I sat in that booth for an hour after she left, thinking about the person I used to be. The one who built things. the one who believed in fairness and hard work and doing the right thing. That person would be ashamed of me. That person would have confessed months ago. I pulled out my phone and looked up the number for the district attorney's office. I turned myself in on a Monday morning. The confession took 3 hours. I walked them through everything: the theft of credit that drove me to resentment, the slow build of rage, the planning, the execution, the months of silence while an innocent woman faced prosecution. The detective who took my statement seemed almost disappointed. She'd been expecting a dramatic story of corporate espionage or organized crime. What she got was smaller, sadder. A burned-out engineer who'd let bitterness curdle into something destructive. The charges were filed within the week: felony destruction of property, computer fraud, obstruction of justice for allowing Priya to be investigated for my crime. My lawyer told me to expect 3 to 5 years, possibly less with good behavior and a guilty plea. I pled guilty. The sentencing hearing was 6 weeks later. The courtroom was nearly empty. My parents, looking shell-shocked, a few reporters covering the tech industry angle. Priya sitting in the back row, her face unreadable. Marcus Webb wasn't there. He'd been promoted again, VP of Operations now, and apparently couldn't spare the time. He'd issued a statement expressing disappointment at my betrayal of the company's trust. No mention of his own role in creating the conditions for that betrayal. No acknowledgement that anything might have been handled differently. Some things never change. The judge gave me 4 years, eligible for parole in 2 with good behavior. As sentences go, it could have been worse. The destruction of property was significant, but no one had been physically harmed, and my confession had prevented further harm to Priya. As they led me away, I passed within a few feet of her seat. She didn't say anything, just nodded once, a small acknowledgement of something I couldn't quite name. Recognition, maybe? Or release? Or just the satisfaction of seeing justice, imperfect as it was, finally served. That was 8 months ago. I'm writing this from a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania. The days are long and monotonous, but I found a strange peace in the routine. I wake up, I work, I eat, I sleep. No decisions to make about my career, my future, my moral compromises. Those choices have been taken from me, and in their absence, I found something like clarity. I think about Aurora sometimes. The company eventually rebuilt it. Took them 14 months and a new team, but they got it done. Marcus Webb took credit for the successful recovery, naturally. Some things really never change. But I don't feel the rage anymore. The burning resentment that drove me to destruction has finally cooled to something I can live with. What's left is regret, an ocean of it, but regret is survivable. It's fuel for becoming something better, if you let it be. Priya sent me a letter last month, short, formal, but not unkind. The charges against her were officially dropped. Her reputation is slowly recovering. She started a new job at a nonprofit focused on tech industry labor rights, helping other people navigate the kind of exploitation that broke both of us. She said she doesn't forgive me. She said she probably never will. But she's grateful that I eventually found the courage to tell the truth. I'll take what I can get. My parents visit every other week. They don't understand what happened, how their son, the one they raised to be honest and hardworking, became someone capable of such calculated cruelty. I've tried to explain, but some things can only be understood from the inside. I think about the person I was before all of this, the one who believed that merit would be rewarded, that hard work would lead to recognition, that the system would eventually treat him fairly. That person was naive, but he wasn't evil. The evil came from what happened when naivety shattered. When I realized the world didn't work the way I'd believed, I had a choice: adapt with grace or lash out in fury. I chose fury. And fury, unchecked, turns into something monstrous. The hardest lesson I've learned is this: just because you've been wronged doesn't give you the right to wrong others. Marcus Webb stole my work, yes. The company failed to recognize my contributions, yes. The system was unfair, yes. But none of that justified what I did. None of that excused the destruction. And absolutely none of that gave me the right to let an innocent woman suffer from my revenge. We are not entitled to justice. Sometimes we don't get what we deserve. Sometimes bad people prosper and good people struggle. And in those moments, the choice of who we become, hero or villain, creator or destroyer, that choice is entirely ours. I made the wrong choice. I have to live with that. But I can also make different choices going forward. Smaller choices maybe, less dramatic. Choices about honesty, about kindness, about the kind of person I want to be when I finally walk out of this place. I have 18 months left on my sentence, assuming parole. 18 months to think about what comes next. 18 months to figure out how to rebuild a life from the wreckage of my worst decisions. 18 months. The same amount of time I spent building Aurora. Maybe that's enough to build something else, something better, something that doesn't end in deletion. So that's my story, the whole ugly truth from beginning to end. I destroyed a $1 million project, let an innocent woman take the blame, and eventually confessed when the weight of my lies became unbearable. I'm sitting in a prison cell writing this, and I need to know, do you think there's a way back from something like this? Not forgiveness. I don't expect that from Priya, from my former colleagues, from anyone. But redemption. The chance to become someone other than my worst act. And I have one more question. The one that keeps me up at night. Was there ever a moment when I could have stopped? When the trajectory toward destruction could have been changed? Or was I always going to end up here, from the moment I let resentment take root in my heart? I need to hear from you. If you've ever let bitterness drive you to do something you regret, something you can't take back, tell me how you found your way forward. Tell me it's possible to be more than the worst thing you've done. Drop your answers in the comments. Share your stories. I'll read every single one. I have nothing but time now. And if you take anything from my confession, let it be this. Revenge feels like power, but it's actually surrender. It's letting the people who wronged you determine who you become. Don't make my mistake. Don't let them win by turning you into something you don't recognize. Hold on to who you are, even when the world tries to take it from you. That's worth more than any revenge could ever be.